Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Target Jobs webinar with Student Minds. This webinar is all about introducing you to this incredible charity and the work that they do. We are really excited to be partnering with Student Minds to add another level of support to our services. So in the session, we won't be offering personal one-to-one advice, but hopefully by the end, if you or a friend feel that you need some support, you'll know where to go to get some advice. If you have any general questions about Student Minds, though, then please do ask using the chat function, and we'll try and get through as many as we can towards the end of the webinar. Don't forget to upvote if you see a question that you would like to be answered. I'm joined by Alice at Student Minds, but just before I hand over, I wanted to talk about the new advice articles that we've written with Student Minds. So the first one is about supporting a friend with struggling with their mental health. And I just wanted to kind of bring out a couple of points from each of the advice articles. So the first point from this one talks about kind of noticing when someone is struggling, and the kind of key message is that there is no universal sign that someone is struggling with their mental health, but things that you can look out for are things like changes in behaviour, mood, concentration levels, attention span, attitudes, and kind of how your friend presents themselves. Another key point is to kind of listen carefully when providing support. So if there's a pause in their speech, don't kind of rush to fill it, and give your friend the chance to kind of collect their thoughts. Try not to jump to conclusions either, instead of kind of clarifying questions if you're unsure about what is meant by something your friend says. You can also kind of focus on your friend's feelings rather than their symptoms. So if your friend seems behaving in a way that's harmful to them, talk about it to them and encourage them to try and support if they aren't already. But if they are behaving in a way that's unusual for them, and if it's not unusual for them, it can make them feel self-conscious. So try to focus on their feelings and thoughts. So the full article is available on our website, and my colleague will share a link in just a second once I've spoken about the other two. So the next article that we have written is all about managing your stress and taking your job search step by step. So, job hunting is stressful at the best of times, let alone kind of trying to do so with everything that's going on with the pandemic at the moment. So just a couple of key points to kind of take out of this article is about kind of structuring your job hunt. So organising your time can really help with this. Decide on a reasonable number of hours to spend on your job hunt each day, and try to take at least 2 full days off each every week. So kind of treat university and job hunting as like a full-time job, and have a couple of weeks to kind of do other activities. So creating a timetable with allocated time slots for your tasks could give you a structure that will help you to stay focused. Or you might decide to use a strategy for organisation that has worked for you before, perhaps when juggling lots of deadlines at university. Another really important thing to do is to release your stress. So whichever way you decide to organise your job search, make sure you schedule in breaks, relaxation, and time spent doing things that you enjoy and that interest you. So this will help you to release stress, which most importantly will protect your mental well-being, but should also improve your concentration and motivation in your job search. As well as more immediate stress releases, like going for a run, taking time to build up an interest in something unrelated to your career can work as a regular reminder that it isn't everything, and help you to see some positives in the bigger picture. So definitely kind of, more recreational hobbies and things like that. And the last new article that we have at the moment is about kind of making sure that you look after yourself whilst looking after others as well. So again, kind of taking breaks is really important. You might start to find that a role of supporter could leave you without much time to do things that you need or enjoy. So as part of setting boundaries with your friend, you could ensure that you allocate time to take out for yourself. One approach might be making a mental note of a period in which you will either encourage them to speak to one of their other sources of support, or let them know that you are busy but will respond to their message later or tomorrow. You can encourage other sources of support as well, and hopefully this webinar will kind of give you some ideas as to what sort of sources are out there. So if your friend has other people to turn to, then you're more likely to get a chance to take a break. So talk about their relationships with family members and other friends, and encourage them to keep things up. You might also suggest that they see a GP or spend some time searching for local services with them as well. And most importantly, another point is to inform yourself. So it's great that you're kind of sitting on this webinar and, ready to learn about kind of mental health and how you can help yourself and those that might need your support. So spending a bit of time reading up on specific difficulties your friend is dealing with could help you feel more confident about supporting them and perhaps worry less that you're doing the wrong thing. So Student Minds has advice dedicated support for eating disorders, bipolar disorder, depression, OCD, anxiety and psychosis. But remember that you're not expected to be an expert and you're helping by simply being there and listening. So that's just a snapshot of some of the new advice that we've written with Student Minds. As I mentioned, it is on the TARGETjobs website if you wanted to go and read and kind of start that information finding. My colleague has posted those in the chat function for you there as well. So that is, I just wanted to kind of summarise those. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Alice at Student Minds, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about what they do.
Thank you so much, Justine. That was a fab overview, and it's been brilliant to work with TARGETjobs on these new pieces of content. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Alice, and I work for the charity Student Minds. So we're the UK's student mental health charity, and you can find us across our socials at studentminds.org. So just a quick run through of what we're going to be chatting through today. So first off, I'm going to give us an overview of student mental health and then move on to talking about Student Minds, who we are as a charity, and then take a look at what the last year and the COVID-19 pandemic has done for student mental health and our response in the form of student space, and then finally rounding off with a few bits of further information and a thank you for being here today. So, first things first, it's always so important to know what we mean when we're referring to mental health. So, this is a little introduction to student mental health. So, what is mental health? Mental health refers to a full spectrum of experience, and this can range from good mental health to mental illness. So, what do we mean by good mental health? So, this can be feeling good, responding appropriately, positively contributing to the community, and the absence of mental health illness. So poor mental health or mental health difficulties can mean individuals experience levels of emotional or psychological distress, which are beyond their ability to effectively manage and positively contribute to the community within which they live. So student mental health, what does it mean for the student community? So there are currently around 2.4 million students at UK universities, and we know that roughly 1 in 3 students suffer clinical levels of psychological distress through these formative years. Anxiety and depression are some of the most commonly experienced mental illnesses in the student population, but as we know, the student population is so diverse, and students also can experience eating disorders, self-harm, OCD, bipolar disorder, psychosis, and personality disorders, amongst many others. So why do we focus on student mental health? Why are we all here today? So we know that university brings a unique range of challenges, including academic, financial, and social pressures. For me, I always think of it as, imagine moving house, leaving behind your support network, starting an academically rigorous new job, becoming financially independent, and building new friendships all at the same time, and perhaps for the very first time. We also know that the peak age of mental illness onset overlaps with the median age of the majority of students, with 75% of mental health difficulties developing by the mid-20s. And finally, the number of students who disclose a mental health condition to their university has increased dramatically in the past decade. Universities have experienced significant increases in demand for counselling and disability services. So it's incredibly important to focus on student mental health. What is the impact then? What can all of this mean for students experiencing life at university? So experiencing poor mental health at university can contribute to decreased performance and interpersonal problems, which can lead to academic failure and dropout, also with job difficulties and negative social outcomes. We also know that tragically in recent years there has been an increase in the number of student deaths by suicide. So that's the context. That's all about student mental health and why it's so important to focus on it. So now I'm going to move us on to talk about student minds and who we are. So if you've not come across us before, we are Student Minds and we're the UK's student mental health charity. So we've been going since 2009 and we've been leading the change ever since in student mental health across the UK. So what do we do? What do we get up to every day? So we empower students to run peer support groups, to campaign on issues which are meaningful to them and share experiences of university life and mental health on our student-run blog. We also provide training for university and student accommodation staff, which helps them to develop skills and run workshops to improve student mental health. We also ensure that our work is evidence-led by collaborating to conduct research, create interventions, effective solutions, and to ensure that we are co-producing essential guidance alongside students. So we're not doing anything to students, and without them, we're working alongside students. So I'll now take us through each of those points in a little bit more detail. So peer support. So students are often the first source of support for their peers, and this is why we know it's so important to have safe and healthy conversations and spaces to be able to talk and share experiences of mental health. So that's why we run these peer support groups. So there are 4 different kinds of peer support groups. One focuses on low mood and mild depression. Another is for people who are experiencing eating disorders and body image struggles. There's also a group focused more on prevention. So how can you instill practices to support positive mental health and well-being? And finally, we have a group for supporters. So if you're looking after somebody else's mental health, how can we ensure that you're also looking after yourself as well? So our groups are run by trained student facilitators. So they are there to ensure that conversations remain supportive and safe, and they in turn are supported by members of our staff team to make sure that the burden isn't becoming too great and that they're still able to have care for their own mental health. So we know from feedback and our research that peer support attendees show a significant increase in well-being and also in their ability to talk openly about their mental health and to become more literate in their mental health. We also run some absolutely fabulous student-led initiatives. So we coordinate a network of student campaign groups and empower them to champion the student voice on mental health by raising awareness and running their own campaigns. So there are groups across the UK at different universities so that they're able to focus on issues that are meaningful to them and that are relevant to their local setting and community. So we also run the Student Minds blog, which is the biggest student-led blog on university life and mental health in the UK. So it's overseen and supported by our comms team, but it's run by the student editorial team who produce, edit and curate essential content for students and by students. So training, what do we get up to here? So we run Train the Trainer programs, which equip university staff to run workshops directly to students to help build mental health literacy on their campuses and enabling us to reach a greater number of students in the UK. So there are 3 different training programs. The first 2 are this Train the Trainer model, and they are called Look Your Mate and Mental Health in Sport. So the latter is all about how we can build inclusive communities within sports societies, and the former is more again about how we can support supporters, how we can be greater peers in terms of looking after each other's mental health. So trainers then go on to deliver these workshops directly to students, and they're a brilliant brilliant network of trainers all over the UK. So the final one, training programme, is all about accommodation staff. So we know that they play a key part in terms of supporting and championing student mental health. So we want to be able to give them the knowledge, confidence and skills to open up conversations about mental health difficulties, and also to notice signs and symptoms and help with signposting for students that are in need. So, research and resources. We have a lot going on in this area. So, we drive national change by developing research and policy recommendations and sharing best practice as influenced by the student voice. So, one example of this is the University Mental Health Charter, which aims to hold universities accountable to a series of benchmarking principles that are able to help them instill a whole university approach to mental health. So it's not just the provision of support services, how can the whole university get involved? We also create and run research-driven national campaigns. So we actually had University Mental Health Day last week, and it was a brilliant day. We know it's been such a difficult last year, and that was an opportunity for us to come together, support one another and champion the successes in terms of supporting student mental health, and also look at what we need to continue to do to drive change and improve student mental health. And we also share a wealth of knowledge and resources such as our Know Before You Go and transition guides, which are focused on prospective and current students. So the Know Before You Go guide, as it says on the tin, is more about supporting you to prepare for university, and transitions again is focused on that journey between further education and higher education. So, a little bit about our influence in higher education and beyond. So, this lovely lady here is Rosie Tressler, and she is our CEO, and there she is holding her OBE. So, we are a trusted and independent voice for student mental health within higher education, public health, and the student community. As I mentioned, here's Rosie, who was honoured in Her Majesty the Queen's Birthday Honours List in 2019 in recognition of her services to mental health. But we're also frequently invited to contribute to and speak directly to government, lawmakers and influential figures. So a few examples of who we've met with recently being the Duchess of Cambridge, Michelle Donnellan, the Minister of State for Universities, and Labour Party leader Keir Starmer. So here's a little snapshot of our network. So we work with over 100 different universities and have some brilliant engagement figures across our blogs and online presence. And last year, we haven't yet managed to collate the figure for last week. We were able to reach 29 million people through the hashtag Uni Mental Health Day, which was just fabulous. So that's Student Minds, but I wanted to take you through a little bit more now on COVID-19 and what that has meant for student mental health. So what is the impact of the pandemic? So we know that emotional responses of stress and fear in the face of the pandemic are normal and valid. In the first lockdown, students were more likely than the general population to feel anxious and worried, unable to cope, and experience self-harm. Both young people and students have cited feelings of loneliness and isolation, and students feel the pandemic and online learning has had a negative impact on their ability to perform and engage academically. Students have struggled to access or engage with support at university whilst being at home, and many students and young people have experienced increased anxiety about their future, which includes concerns about their ability to be successful at university, the future of the university sector, and their long-term employment prospects, as well as their finances. So it's also university staff that have felt the effects, and they are worried about increased workload and job security. So it has definitely been a really tough time for everyone. We know, however, that challenges to student mental health existed long before COVID-19. Some have been exacerbated by the pandemic, such as financial difficulties, uncertainty about university, health inequalities, and quick access to effective treatment. We also know that others have been shaped entirely by the pandemic, such as access to learning and digital poverty increases. There are still further challenges that are brand new, such as the exposure of students in clinical practice to COVID-19 and the impacts of social distancing and lockdown measures, which have prevented postgrad research students from conducting fieldwork. So the impact of the pandemic on student mental health, we know, will outlast the pandemic itself. And so it's vitally important that our support of students and staff must also continue. So, student space, what is this? So, as we've just been chatting through, coronavirus has exacerbated existing challenges facing student mental health, but it has also created new ones. So we know that students have faced disruption to face-to-face support programs, have experienced isolation or loneliness, or find that features of the response to coronavirus, such as an emphasis on hand washing and increased hygiene practices, can aggravate symptoms of an existing mental health condition. We also know that the student population is incredibly diverse, and so different students have been affected by the pandemic in various ways. That depends on a number of factors about themselves, including what they study, their lifestyle, and their socio-economic circumstances. So student space has been carefully designed to make the best use of the resource available. It aims to supplement and support rather than replace existing services. And it doesn't intend to offer types of therapeutic support already provided by unis and colleges and the NHS, who are currently working hard to support students. So, student space is for students, and we know that it's going to be here until at least the end of July, but we're currently looking at what the future of student space holds post COVID-19. So it's available to all in higher education in terms of the articles and content across the site. However, the direct support is specifically for students studying in England and Wales. So we know that students have faced unique challenges to university life. And so Student Space is here to provide access to confidential support through trained volunteers, and that can be via text, over the phone, email, and web chat. There's also a wealth of online resources, including articles and videos of students sharing their lived experiences of mental health at university. And there's also a search function where you're able to input your university and find out what mental health support is available local to you. So a little bit more about the direct support services. So you can call us for free. And that phone line is a free phone number open between 4 and 11. And that is offering listening support, information, and signposting for students. We also have our web chat support function. And again, that's open from 4 until 11. And you're able to speak to a trained supporter who will listen and help you talk through the issues that you may be experiencing. And we have our text service. So this is the 24-hour direct support service. You just need to text student to 85 25 8, and you can have support from a trained volunteer, which is free, confidential, and anonymous. And finally, the email support is right there, students@themix.org.uk, where you can get support, again, from a trained volunteer and supporter. So whatever is causing you concern, we're here to listen. So here is a little bit of further information if you feel you want to learn a little bit more about the resources we have available and also the support that we have available. So we've got a plethora of research available on there. Find out more about the University Mental Health Charter and how your university can get involved. There's also a support programme for students' unions, because we know they play such a key part in terms of supporting student mental health. We also have peer support programs, as we mentioned previously, for students, a wealth of information on transitioning into higher education, the Student Minds blog, and then finally the wellbeing platform, which is specifically for postgraduate students. So I also wanted to provide some references there. I know we all love a little bit of referencing in terms of the stats and figures around student mental health and COVID-19. So that's the end of the presentation from me. I just wanted to say a huge thank you and know that together we will transform the state of student mental health so that all in higher education can thrive.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for that, Alice. What a really amazing, informative presentation about kind of Student Minds and the services that you offer there. There's a couple of questions coming through on the chat. My colleague is kind of replying to them as we go along. For anyone who's kind of asking about links and things, this webinar will be posted on the TARGETjobs website afterwards, so you will be able to kind of access those links after as well. Before we come back to the questions in the chat, Alice, I just wanted to ask a few things from kind of our side, and yeah, just to find out a little bit more about kind of what's next and things for Student Minds. So I guess my first question is, why are you passionate about mental health and why did you decide to work for Student Minds?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wanted to work for a charity that aligned with my values. So the core values of Student Minds are to be innovative, courageous, empowering, and collaborative. And I think it's all a combination of all four of those things is so needed to help student mental health and to be a part of the conversation that moves things forward. I also know that everybody has mental health, and I wanted to be a part of an organisation that is driving that change to recognise that, so that students and the university community can develop the knowledge, the confidence and the skills to look after their own mental health. But I guess another part of that question, why am I passionate about mental health? It's because I have lived experience of depression and anxiety. So I know firsthand how vital it is that people are empowered and supported. And I'm particularly passionate about championing student mental health in particular, because a friend died by suicide in my first year of university, which obviously hugely impacted my mental health and the mental health of those around me. And it's just so important that every student deserves the opportunity to thrive in higher education, and improving student mental health is such a crucial part of that.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for sharing that personal story there. And kind of in terms of Student Minds, what kind of research or projects do you have going on at the moment? Obviously, you talked about some of the past research that you've done in the past. I think that new that's happening at the moment.
Yeah, so it's Student Space. So Student Space was launched in August 2020, obviously in response to COVID-19. And the resultant increased pressure on student mental health difficulties. So it's just an incredible resource, and it's a hub really of resources, and we're continuously updating the service. So most recently we added resources on life after university, graduate recruitment and life as a disabled student, and we're also working to publish more video content of students sharing their own experiences of university life in the pandemic, to ensure students know that they aren't alone.
That's fantastic. And is there any kind of plans for anything new? Where do you sort of see Student Minds kind of in the next year or two?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the first thing is we're about to release our new strategy for the next few years. So we're going to have a roadmap for what we're going to be doing in terms of student mental health. But in recent months, we have a very exciting development with University Mental Health Charter. So the charter was launched in 2019 to support unis across the UK in making mental health a university-wide priority. And it was developed in consultation with nearly 3,000 students from 181 different universities and SUs. And And since its publication, the Charter has started to have a hugely positive impact on strategy, policy and practice with a number of universities. And we've also run a successful Charter pilot, but what's coming in spring and summer of this year is that we'll be launching the Charter programme and award, which is going to offer support to unis to achieve long-term cultural change and for them to work towards achieving that Charter award. So watch this space and see if your university is going to be getting involved.
That sounds really fantastic. How exciting. And I guess my next question is, obviously, this webinar and our partnership with you is all about kind of supporting students with their job hunt and all the stresses that are kind of going on around the pandemic as well. So do you think we'll see a decline in the number of students struggling with their mental health once the kind of pandemic has gone?
No, sadly not. We know that challenges to student mental health existed long before COVID-19, and the impact of the pandemic will outlast the pandemic itself. So we've seen some mental health challenges worsened by the pandemic, such as financial difficulties and access to treatment, whereas others have been shaped by the pandemic entirely. Obviously, with having to access learning from home, there's been an increase in access difficulties and digital poverty. So further challenges are new, like the exposure of students in clinical practice and research students' ability to complete fieldwork. But with the roadmap out of lockdown now, I know that it feels that we've got more of a sense of direction and we have a clearer picture of what the near future holds. But as a whole, we've still got a lot of uncertainty, and we know that students are still going to face high levels of uncertainty about university life. So we don't see a decrease in mental health difficulties with students anytime soon.
I guess the good thing about that is that there are charities like yourselves that are out there, and it's important that those people that may struggle in the next foreseeable future have got access to that support. And my next question is a bit more of a personal one. What's your lockdown experience been like?
Well, it's been a real mixed bag. It's been a huge mixture of experiences and emotions, and I think for me, one of the most different and difficult things that I've had to adapt to is home working. So I found maintaining connections with my colleagues and ideas really. Particularly with work, I've been really honest and open with my line manager and team, who've responded with some really brilliant initiatives and support. So we have a piece of software called Slack, which reminds me of MSN, which probably shows my age, but it's an instant messaging communication platform. And so through Slack, we have daily questions, such as, what's a recipe that you've been enjoying recently? Have you found another good local walk, and things like that, just to keep that human connection and to have those chats that you may have whilst making a cup of tea in the office kitchen. And then we also have what we call buddy hangouts, but are in reality, again, having that cup of tea, but just over video call. So we have those bi-weekly, and that's just a time to take a step back from work and say hi to colleagues and ask how they're doing, and to share how you're doing as well. So that's been really important, to come together as a team whilst also working from home. And then I think also the lack of commute has given me an opportunity to really take some time for myself and get out in just my local area really, to have a walk, or to use that time where I would have been travelling to have a catch-up call with friends and family. But I think it's so important to remember that whatever your experiences of lockdown have been and are, I'd really urge you to find ways to look after your mental well-being and health. So this could be by getting into a good sleep routine, building movement into your day, and doing something that you enjoy, which is obviously very different for all of us. And I guess the most crucial thing, that if you are finding you're less able to cope um, with mental health difficulties and challenges, make sure that you are reaching out for support if you're worried about yourself, or if you're worried about someone else too.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice there. And I think it's definitely, the whole working from home thing is definitely kind of similar to the university life. You know, you go from
Yeah.
very sociable as a student, it's all about socializing. I mean, it's definitely something that I had to adjust to as well. And don't worry, I also remember the days of MSN, so you're not alone in that one. Brilliant. And in your presentation, you mentioned the initiative around student support groups. And that, you know, students can kind of train up to run those. So if someone were interested in that, how could they kind of find out more and sign up for that?
Yeah, definitely. So we're always really keen to hear from students who would like to get involved in the peer support groups. So if you're a current student at university and you'd like to train with us to become a peer support facilitator, then you'd be very welcome to contact our peer support manager. So her email address is volunteer@studentminds.org.uk. So that's volunteer@studentminds.org.uk. And please use that to inquire either about setting up a new peer support group of your own or with peers, but also you can find out if a group is already in place at your university. So it could be that there's a group for you to join rather than a group for you to set up um, from the start. But yeah, as mentioned, there's 4 different peer support groups. So we hope that they cover quite a wide range of mental health difficulties that students might need support with. So low mood and mild depression is one. Students experiencing eating disorders is another. Students who are interested in building on and building up their well-being, so as a more preventative measure, there's one for them. And then the final group is a group for supporters. So if you're looking after somebody else's mental health, we want to ensure that you're also looking after yourself as well. So yeah, absolutely welcome students getting in touch and asking about what peer support groups are available at your university, and also perhaps you could set one up.
Fantastic, thank you. And so I'm just going to cut through to some of the questions that have been coming through whilst you've been presenting. There's a couple of questions around kind of feeling a bit overwhelmed with, you know, university work, and then kind of the pressures of finding a job, and, you know, all the kind of other life pressures that are going on around the pandemic at the moment. So is there any advice that you have for people that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to recognize that self-managing your mental health is great if you're mentally well enough to build your own toolkit of resilience. But that's the key thing, isn't it? If you are mentally well enough to do those things and to look after yourself, and if you can find the energy and the time to do things like building your resilience and practicing mindfulness, which we know can reduce stress and increase your ability to manage your emotional responses to everyday situations, you know, that's a great thing to try out. So mindfulness and stress relieving activities and other techniques for better mental well-being definitely have an important part to play in the prevention and management of mental health difficulties, which could then you know, turn into long-term conditions. But it's important also to recognize that building resilience and self-care, it can't ever really be used as a stand-in for professional and specialized support. So if you feel you need help, reach out to your GP. If you're worried that you've reached a point where your building resilience isn't being effective anymore, reach out and seek that level of support. That being said, if you do feel able to build that toolkit and you are wanting to focus on how to build up your resilience, we know that our nutrition, our daily routine, and exercise, and also our physical health can have a direct impact in a positive way on our emotional well-being. So things like improving our physical health, whilst it won't necessarily prevent or cure all mental health difficulties, it can give us more energy and focus to confront challenges and solve problems that we're dealing with in terms of job hunting, in terms of university work. So some small changes to consider if we're wanting to boost our well-being would be to look at setting regular sleep and waking times. So having that building of a good sleep routine we know is important. Also trying to experience morning sunlight. So the effects of sunlight on your mental health can be quite incredible. So try experiencing morning sunlight through a window or going for a walk. Um, and also setting small exercise goals can be a really useful way to build momentum in terms of self-care and well-being. So it could be that you just walk a few steps further on your next trot outside, or if you're on a run or a jog, go 100 meters further. It doesn't have to be huge incremental changes to your exercise. Those small steps are really important too. And then a final thing to consider if we're wanting to build up our resilience toolkit is also to try to limit screen and device time in the last hour before bed. So giving yourself that opportunity, that headspace to take a break and prepare for hopefully what is going to be a very restful sleep for you.
Great stuff. Thank you ever so much, Alice. That's some really good advice there. I think, yeah, particularly exercise myself. I've taken up running, which I didn't think I would ever do. And I've actually been getting up in the mornings before work because I find it hard to fit into my daily routine otherwise. And it does make a huge difference. I can definitely vouch for that one. A couple of students have asked just to clarify where Student Minds operates. So whether it's a UK university-wide service or whether it's just across England and Wales.
Yeah, so Student Minds, the charity, operates across the UK. The operation of student space in terms of the direct support that's available is for English and Welsh universities. So yeah, the distinction I know can be confusing, but yeah, the majority of our support and work is available all over the UK.
Fantastic, thank you. The next question is about kind of how you integrate the mental health charter into the work that Student Minds do.
Yeah, definitely. So the charter has been a huge part of our work to inform universities that a whole organisation approach is a really positive way to approach mental health, both for students and for staff. So in terms of how we integrate that into our work, the whole university approach, as we call it, is something that we advocate for across all levels. So we also run a sector improvement programme for students' unions. And so we also advocate for a whole organisation approach to mental health, as well as, a whole university approach. So the fact that we want this to be a holistic approach to mental health, that we don't want mental health to be a closed off topic for any particular part of an organisation, that's something that we instill across all of our work. So that's, yeah, one of the ways in which we integrate it further.
Fantastic, thank you. And the next question that's come in is how many students approximately are using Student Minds and Student Space services right now?
Oh, that's such a good question, and I would love to know the answer. If our comms manager was here, I'm sure she would know the answer, because she has some brilliant engagement analytics and everything like that. But the honest answer is I don't have that figure available. I do know that we work with over 100 different universities across the UK. I know that last year's University Mental Health Day reached 29 million people. I know that we have a network of university staff trainers who deliver those student mental health workshops of around 500. But no, that's such a good question, and I wish I had the answer for you, but I will go away and yeah, try and get that message back through TARGETjobs if we can. But thank you, that was a fab question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, the sounds of the initiatives and things, and the widespread of universities that you have, it sounds like you've got quite good outreach there. So our next question is from a graduate. So obviously student space and student minds is all about kind of university students. So would you say your advice is kind of relevant to recent grads who are kind of, struggling with finding a job in the current kind of market?
Yeah, so I think there's particularly a space on student space that is best for graduates to check out in terms of helping to support with life after university, and as you say, with what is a very challenging time to be a graduate and to be looking for a job. So yeah, I definitely check out Student Space because there's a section on there for life after university. I know also that across our Student Minds blog, it doesn't stop at that graduation point. We always are keen to hear from graduates in terms of sharing your experiences of mental health, of the graduate workplace. So the support services that are available don't necessarily have that cut-off point. If you're looking for that support, please do get in touch and we'll see what we can do to help.
Fantastic, thank you. The next question was about kind of how to better handle stress. So I will just mention earlier there that earlier went through one of the new advice articles that TARGETjobs have written with student minds about how to manage stress and kind of take your job hunt step by step. So my colleague will reshare that link with you in just a second, so you can have a little read through there. Some really good points in that article. That is all of the questions that have come through so far, and I just wanted to say, in terms of kind of you mentioned earlier resilience, Alice, to kind of bring it back down to the idea of building resilience, which is a skill that a lot of employers are looking for at the moment. So again, TARGETjobs has a really good advice article on the website about how to build your resilience and kind of understand why it's important and why employers are looking for that. So my colleague will post a link to that one as well in just a second. But did you have any kind of additional points on or advice on how to build resilience at all, Alice?
I think, as you said, there's some brilliant points in both of those articles, so I definitely recommend checking them out. But in terms of building resilience, there's some things to be done in terms of your self-care. So if you're wanting to be able to respond more confidently or feel more positively, then there's definitely techniques that you can look at in terms of building your tolerance to those everyday struggles and problem solving. So definitely things like mindfulness, building those boundaries so that you're not feeling that pressure that maybe external, maybe coming from yourself, in terms of having to always be on. So allowing yourself to have those breaks, to, as Justine was saying, take those 2 days out of the week off, so that you are giving yourself chance to recuperate and revitalize, because we can't pour from an empty cup. And it's so vital to ensure that you're doing the best you can to look after yourself so that you're able to develop that resilience, and also recognize that if it's got to a point where you feel like you can't cope on your own, reaching out to your GP, making use of your support network to ensure that you're not struggling alone.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for the advice there, Alice. yeah, this has been, hopefully everyone's found this like a really useful webinar, and yeah, thank you ever so much for taking the time to come and speak to us about Student Minds and the services that you offer. Just before I wrapped up, I just wanted to say that TARGETjobs also run other employability webinars and events, and we've got a couple of things coming up this month that I just wanted to point out. So our next event is Aspire next Friday on the 19th of March. And this is an event for Black Heritage students to come and meet leading employers and take part in some skill sessions to kind of demystify the application process. We also have Future Female Engineers on the 26th of March. So this is for women studying STEM degrees that would like to find out more about a career in engineering. And we have a couple of other webinars coming up in March as well, including sustainability, how to succeed with Audi, and some part-time undergraduate information internships as well. So don't forget to register to those and sign up for any events and webinars that you might be interested in attending. But yeah, I just wanted to say again, thank you ever so much, Alice, for taking the time to come and speak to us. And yeah, hopefully everyone has found that really useful, and I'm really looking forward to kind of introducing and sharing some more news about the partnership in the near future.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much, everyone. Take lots of care.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye.